Okay, so just some housekeeping. Can I just ask everybody, people who are just joining us at the moment, can I ask you to please switch off your microphones? I do usually like this our sessions to be quite informal, but because we should have quite a number of people joining us, feel free to use the chat facility if you have any questions. Just enjoy this time for your own professional learning as well. Also, I'm part of the DigiLearn Scot team, so please feel free to tweet at DigiLearn Scot or get involved using the hashtag DigiLearnChat. There's always someone on the end of our Twitter account. So again, just to remind people, if you can just mute yourself, because I know lots of people are joining us from very, very busy schools, it just stops interference. I should also say, and Brian has reminded us, the session is being recorded, so yes, you can watch it again. My colleague Brian Clark is also here with us, so he'll be able to monitor the chat facility as well and just help to mute people in the background. So thank you very much. Okay, so without further ado, I think we should absolutely get started. So welcome to the Scottish Learning Festival and welcome to this session on developing independent digital learners. My name is Louise Foreman. Oh, that's a terrible start when I don't even know my last name. Louise Foreman, and I'm an Education Officer with the Digital Learning and Teaching team here at Education Scotland. I'm joined today by the wonderful Tim Beattie from Harris Academy, from Dundee City Council, and he's also a member of the Pedagogies team, and I'm going to really build him up here. Tim has also recently contributed a great deal of his work to a new book called Organise Ideas, Thinking by Hand, Extending the Mind. So we are incredibly grateful for your time here, Tim, today to share your experiences and knowledge. So I'm just going to hand over to yourself to say a quick hello to everybody.
Thanks, Louise. It's great to be here. I think that was quite a build-up. I preferred Tim knows a lot about biscuits, but yeah, no, great to be here, and hopefully, yeah, we can learn a wee bit together. So just excited to get going. So yeah, let's go.
Excellent. So in the seminar, we're going to cover the what, the why, and the how of independent learning, how to build learners' skills for learning independently in a digital world, how digital tools can help model, scaffold, and support pupils to enable self-regulation, what this looks like as we move through primary to secondary, and why this is so important and what the benefits are. So a major theme of being able to successfully take forward independent learning skills is that of the role of teacher and the practitioner as the mentor, the guide to the social process of learning to inspire, challenge and excite students to want to learn, making a learner think about what they're learning, promoting students to identify the right strategies to solve problems and tasks efficiently and effectively. These are lifelong learning skills for all our students and sit at the heart of our 4 capacities and our curriculum for excellence. Also, linking this focus to the evolution of digital technologies and how we can effectively combine and use these digital tools to accelerate, to improve outcomes, improve motivation and engagement across the breadth of our curriculum. And so again, providing lifelong skills for all our students within the context of the 4 capacities. Now, prominent evidence emerged throughout lockdown, and this evidence has continued to build momentum as schools have reopened. This evidence comes from the International Council of Education Advisors for Scotland in their 2020 report and within the Education Endowment Foundation. Both significantly highlighted how essential independent learning and digital skills are. Now, all the research today that both myself and Tim will be sharing is all available on our DigiLearn Scot site. So what I think would be really good if my colleague Brian could just pop that link into the independent learning page on DigiLearn Scot, that would be great. But again, feel free to please wait till the end of the session to have a wee look through some of those resources. And again, on our DigiLearn Scot site, what it provides you with is that deeper learning and that deeper understanding for you to develop that knowledge with independent learning. So what is independent learning? It's when pupils have the skills to set goals, plan, monitor and evaluate their own academic development so they can manage their own motivation towards learning. Independent and metacognitive strategies are particularly important for pupils when learning in a blended and hybrid environment. And evidence from the EEF research using digital technologies to improve learning identified digital technologies can play a central role to support and build the skills required to develop self-regulated learning, providing ownership and mastery of that learning. So independent learning or self-regulated learning can be broken down into these three essential components: cognition, the mental processes involved in knowing, understanding and learning; metacognition, thinking about our own learning and learning to learn; and motivation, willingness obviously to engage our metacognitive and cognitive skills. So together with cognition and motivation, metacognition is key to fostering those independent learners who are actively engaged in improving their own learning. And this is the important part. The role of practitioners is to explicitly teach pupils metacognitive strategies. And this is what Tim's going to show you next. That'll be including how to plan, monitor and evaluate their learning. The best available evidence we have today indicates that great teaching is the most important lever to improve outcomes and learner self-efficacy. When pupils feel in control of their own learning and can help direct what they learn, research from the OECD Student Agency 2030 report indicates they show greater motivation to learning. Also, I just wanted to share this from the World Economic Forum, and they indicate that by 2025, 85 million jobs may be displaced by a shift in the division of labour between humans and machines. Critical thinking and problem solving top the list of those skills that employers believe will grow in prominence in the next 5 years. And newly emerging this year for the first time is those skills in self-management, self-regulation, independent learning. It would also be remiss of me, coming from the digital team, not to mention the crucial role that computational thinking skills plays within independent learning strategies. Being able to identify and solve problems, break them down into more manageable parts, abstraction, remove any unnecessary detail from those problems. Computational thinking sits within our technologies curriculum, but it is the golden thread that runs throughout our curriculum and our lives. So if anybody here wants to learn a little bit more about computational thinking, which it's an absolute must for us all, I would advise you particularly look at Barefoot Computing, which is a phenomenal resource, again dedicated to computational thinking skills. So if I can just remind people just to mute yourself, just so we don't have any background noise. Or if anyone can please go on to the
VPN certificate that we should all have.
Yeah. Thank you. I think somebody muted everybody, which is marvellous. Thank you for that. So again, it's just to remind people, Mike.
Louise.
Oh, Tim, thanks so much. I was on mute.
I think somebody keeps on, well, obviously pressing mute all for the good of us all, but
I know.
I think that knocks you off as well.
Well, thank you so much for muting, and Tim, thanks so much for reminding me I'm muted. So this is a marvellous poster that can be downloaded directly from the Education Endowment Foundation website. It can also be accessed via our DigiLearn Scott website, along with all of the research. So the evidence in this report suggests that the use of metacognitive strategies, and this is really vital information as well, is worth the equivalent of an additional 7 months progress when used well. There are 7 recommendations from the EEF as to how we can embed this across our school and our setting. And so for any leaders out there, this is a call to action. Professional learning is at the top of that list. Teachers should acquire the professional understanding and skills to develop their pupils' metacognitive knowledge. Explicitly teach pupils metacognitive strategies, including how to plan, monitor and evaluate learning. Teachers should model these skills, revealing the thought process of an expert learner, and this helps to develop pupils' metacognitive skills. Set appropriate levels of challenge to develop pupils' self-regulation and metacognition, and promote this in the talk and the conversations in our classrooms. And finally, back really to that first point again, just to reiterate that, schools should support teachers to develop knowledge of these approaches and expect them to be applied appropriately. And what Tim's going to be able to show you all is, I really hope that person's talking about enjoying this session. So what Tim is actually going to show is how we support metacognition and self-regulation and independent learning skills, and how that is embedded across the curriculum. Not how it's taught separately, because absolutely not. It should be embedded, and it's crucial that it's embedded into the learning and teaching in a contextualised way. Okay, so moving on to how we can use the digital to accelerate learning across our curriculum and foster independent learning skills. Now, support for the majority of the resources that I'm going to be showing today are all available via DigiLearn Scott. So again, I would definitely say have a wee look at this website. We've got a ton of great bite-sized videos there for teachers, practitioners and anyone to look through and to support them with pedagogy. So I'm going to take these three themes of planning, monitoring and evaluating. First of all, planning. What do I need to learn? So when children are asking themselves that, what do I need to learn? What kind of digital tools can they use and engage with? So I'm going to cover a range of free tools that are available within Glow. And again, if anyone's coming to this new today and they don't know what Glow is, if you're coming out with Scotland, then please go to Glow Connect to have a look at that. We have some external free resources that I'll also be able to speak about as well, but the point of this is that they are all free. Also, you'll see that each area that I speak about today links to the planning, monitoring, links to the learning, teaching and assessment cycle, also known as the moderation cycle, and that's really, really important. So I'm going to start with some resources for planning. So Microsoft Planner helps our students gather elements of learning to create a project plan with a beginning, middle and an end. It also allows teachers and students to assign tasks when collaborating in groups or peer-to-peer. We've also got access to Microsoft Whiteboard, Google Jamboard, providing opportunities for mind mapping, for example, storyboarding our ideas, or for example, to identify prior learning retrieval practice. Use it to brain dump ideas about concepts of a subject, sharing it across groups, sharing it across classes, and discussing and identifying gaps in learning and knowledge. I've also popped in the Idea Award there. So this can be used when learners have identified gaps in knowledge, allowing them to work through an award to develop their digital, enterprising and employability skills. And we have a wide range of Scottish students who have actually signed up for IDEA and are already working through these awards. We also have a simple tool, OneDrive, that simply allows multiple users to plan together on the one document and share live updates in a communal resource space. When I'm talking about using these digital tools, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be all singing, all dancing. It could be just as simple as creating a document to share across with peers, with your teacher, etc. Class Notebook is a very powerful tool, which basically is a digital notebook application. It provides so much freedom for learners to add content, add text, drawing, images, links, videos, and audio. It's a personal workspace for every student and teacher. So moving on to monitoring our learning. So how do I know I'm on the right track, and what digital tools can I use to support this? So we've got Google Classroom and Microsoft Teams, which provide opportunities for live interactions between teachers and learners, peer-to-peer, to provide feedback and monitor progress of learning. This is particularly pertinent when learning in a hybrid or blended learning environment, but it also allows for collaborative teaching and learning spaces to be created. Anytime, anywhere, access to monitor learning. We have OneNote and Class Notebook, as I've already mentioned, but again, this provides that collaborative space or a personal space to journal, note-take learning, provide professional personal reflections, pose questions, discussions, or create assignments set by the teacher. Again, all within tracking and monitoring progress in learning. We've also got Office Lens, and I think this is pretty awesome. And I also sometimes think it's quite underused. Allows students to capture their written notes, plans, etc., and they can then be saved electronically. It also comes with a wide range of accessibility features for additional support needs and learners where English is their second language. So finally, from myself, I want to speak a little bit about tools that we can use for evaluating our learning. So what did I learn? There are so many rich opportunities to use digital tools to help teachers and learners evaluate learning and celebrate success. Digital resources such as Book Creator, Sway, Kahoot, Plickers, iMovie, Explain Everything are being used out there in our schools across Scotland. But I want to particularly focus on some resources, starting with forms. So that's Google Forms or Microsoft Forms. Create multiple choice questions at the beginning of a block of learning, and then also at the end of the block of learning, asking the same questions, being able to capture that assessment, capture that development in skills and knowledge. Another resource I really like to use is Menti to engage in real-time voting, visually displaying results for group, whole class discussions, and you can actually get a free account for Menti. Obviously, there are some restrictions with that, but it's still a really effective tool. And finally, podcasts and blogs, some of my favourite tools to use. They're an excellent way for learners to showcase learning and extend this beyond the walls of the schools to a national and an international audience. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass you over to Tim, who's going to exemplify how he's been progressing with independent learning skills and metacognition across Harris Academy and across Dundee City Council.
Thank you very much, Louise. So much to take in there as well, just on what it is to plan, to monitor and to evaluate our learning. So yeah, I'm just going to talk from, I suppose, the perspective of a teacher and what I have used. I don't claim to be an expert in any of this stuff. Really, I suppose it's just things that really help me. And when we think about the outcomes for our kids, just really helping them to realize and to release their potential. So if I share my screen, I have a little presentation here. And hopefully you can see that developing independent learners developing independent digital learners.
Excellent, Tim. It's there.
Perfect. Thank you. So as we go through, we're going to embed. There's some videos embedded as well, so hopefully you'll be able to hear those. And if there is any issues, please just come through on the chat and say that you can't hear them. Unfortunately, with me, I don't know whether there is a subtitles button, Louise. Sometimes I tend to talk a little bit quickly, and with I suppose some of my people say, "Where are you from? Where are you from?" So if I do tend to talk a little bit quickly, Louise, you can point down and kind of say, "Can you slow down?" So here we go. Developing independent digital learners. As with anything digital, a lot of us now have Twitter hashtags, and if you're on Edu Twitter, that's my little @L&T Harris. So please connect there. As I really feel it's a really useful, I suppose, tool using Twitter and Edu Twitter as well. It can be really helpful in seeing what's sort of happening and what other people are doing and celebrating and looking at good practice. So the big thing with me when you're thinking about planning and monitoring and evaluating learning, for me it's a partnership. Okay, it's a partnership with our pupils, and you kind of look at this and you think, well, do you know what? Me as a teacher, what is my role in all of this? If I'm thinking I want to help my pupils to plan, to monitor, to evaluate their learning, and when I think at the start, it starts very heavy and you're very involved, and you can see the gradual slope and decline there. So at the start of a year, if it's with a new class, there's a lot of modelling goes on, there's a lot of interaction, and there's a lot of the teacher doing. But then as you go through the year, I'm thinking of a standard year, maybe with pupils, might be different if you've got the pupils for more than the 1 year. But obviously that you want to step back a little bit, and that's what we're thinking about, just giving that independence so that you're guiding and then eventually you're supporting, never leaving, because that's the thing with a partnership. But ultimately as a teacher, you want to do yourself out of a job, and so that the pupils taking control and you are relinquishing that control, and that can be difficult in the classroom as well. I've put these two pictures up because you can see the guy to the left there, and he's just getting spoon fed. Somebody's feeding him his cereal, and I think sometimes that's what happens in our classrooms, especially with when we're thinking about how to think and learning how to learn. Very much if it's a chemistry class or a maths class, or if it's in the primary sector, you tend to spoon feed a lot of your curricular content. But the problem with that is, as I say, then the pupils themselves aren't really getting the benefit of being able to lift the spoon themselves. So ultimately, we want to move from that position where the pupil, when you are spoon feeding, is a bit uncertain about things. They can be a wee bit apathetic. They can be a wee bit over-reliant on you doing all the work. Moving so that they're understanding their own thinking and learning process, and they're moving to a place where they are a wee bit more confident. They're showing a wee bit more initiative, and they are self-managing. And I just love that picture of those two. I have a 4-year-old, sorry, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and what they do with a bowl of chocolate when they get let loose on it is mad. But they've got their own spoon, and they're going for it, and they're confident, and they're showing their own initiative. So for me, as I say, the big thing when we're thinking about planning, monitoring, evaluating as well is making things accessible. At Harris, one of our, and you're going to hear a little bit from some of the primary teachers at Ancram Road. One of our feeder schools is Ancram Road Primary. And I thought this was really good. I had a conversation with their head teacher, and she was talking a little bit about just the digital tools that they use. And she talked about how heavily they use Seesaw and use Seesaw Family, which is fantastic. But there was a real switch, and the switch came knowingly, and it came through discussion as well, that realizing, that at Harris, when she moves up and the transition happens from primary 7 into S1, that we heavily use Microsoft and we use Microsoft Teams. So the school had to make a bit of a decision to actually change their mindset and think, right, well, okay, we got to transition these pupils in P6 and P7 to make them ready for doing that. So one of the big things I would say is, if you are that way inclined, if you're a primary teacher, if you're especially thinking if you're primary 6 or primary 7, maybe some head teachers in here as well, thinking about some of the digital tools that you might use in the development stages in primary school, and then thinking about maybe what they will be using as they go on as well. And this just really hit home, because it meant that for me, a lot of our pupils then that come through actually are they're quite confident with the digital tools that we'll use in secondary. But as I say, it was very much a knowingly made decision that this is what we'll have to do and change direction. So accessibility, the other thing for me is thinking a secondary school situation, that getting it right for the learner. I think a lot of the time what we tend to do, and again going back to that spoon feeding, is what we tend to sort of set them homeworks and give them particular learning to do. One of the things that we decided to do during lockdown at Harris was create this Harris at Home portal, and I'll try and go live, hopefully have enough bandwidth, and you will as well, to see this sort of working. So a lot of our different departments, you'll see them across the top there. The different departments are all represented, but they maybe use different digital tools. So if we went to music, they maybe used a Weebly, or if we went to physics maybe used Glow, and we maybe in our MPS and social subjects used Google Sites. So basically this has been built just as a landing page to kind of say, we want our pupils to be able to access a lot of these digital tools, but have we got a place, that one place where they can go, where they can then almost like a crush hall, like that sort of, I suppose, a landing page where that'll take them on their digital journey to where it is that they want to go. The other thing for me is, and why I like it, we talk about this independence, this, I suppose when we think about metacognition, we have to give the learner the opportunity to be able to access these resources. So for me, this was sort of stepping away from here's your homework, to let's think about geography. Do you want to move on a wee bit in your geography? Go here, have a look around the geography subsite, and you can start to get involved in the learning yourself. So again, it was the pupil making that action towards the learning rather than the teacher spoon feeding the pupil and telling the pupil where to go. Doesn't work perfectly, but as I say, we have put a big play on this, and hopefully a lot of our pupils have really benefited through lockdown. But now in class, as I say, they can then access their Microsoft Teams through this if they're struggling to do that, and they can access a lot of their resources and notes as well. So taking us back into the presentation again, our next, Microsoft Teams, we all use it, and we're talking about accessibility, or we'll maybe use Google Classroom as well. But for notes and putting notes online, I think is one of the big things where we're thinking, do you know what, gone are the days, and I love a textbook. I'm currently writing one at the minute, but at the same time, the resources that our pupils need and putting it into their hands so that they can plan, so that they can monitor, and they can evaluate their learning, they need access to high quality resources. And we have loads of digital tools. Louise has mentioned many of them, but making sure, whether it's something like this on a Microsoft team, that in your files, this is my higher class, and you can see there that I've got the folders for Buddhism, medical ethics, origins, the different units that they need, that they're populated with the notes, because ultimately I'm expecting the pupil to go there and to take charge of their own learning. And again, I don't want them coming back to ask me for the resources. I want them just to be able to go and to find them. So accessibility is huge in all of this. Obviously, yes, we want the pupils to be doing more, but we need to be able to provide those tools so that they can do that. Now, when we're thinking about planning, monitoring, evaluating learning, what about the planning stage? So I've just shared this as far as, you know, yeah, let's put our notes and let's make them accessible, etc., or our resources if it's me, and this could be done with any primary class. I'm just using my example of a higher class. But in that planning, I love this as well. I love almost like a roadmap. Now this looks quite complex, and if you don't do higher RMPS, it might be initially, but if you're looking at the screen, what you'll see there is over to the far left hand side, we've got origins. That's our unit, and then you'll see that it takes a wee branch off because one half of the course is about origins of the universe, and then down below we've got origins of life, which is the second half of the course. Now I'm going to put this up live for you again, and this can be done on Google Slides, which we have access through Glow, and it can be done on PowerPoint as well. I have to say, which one's better? I'm not going to get into that argument. I do quite like PowerPoint for this actually, because you can press the wee button which gives you all of your slides to get back to your home page here. But ultimately, I share this with my pupils, and we're going to get Ankrum. It was great being able to speak to some of our primary practitioners in Ankrum, and they're going to talk about how they've done something similar for their primary pupils. But if this was my higher class, again, I have everything up here that they need as far as the two sides of the course. So if they were to go in here and they were to look at origins of the universe, you'll see up at the top, we've got Big Bang. And if they click on that, it just takes them to an external link. Again, we're talking about free resources. I love Adobe Spark for this because again, you can write up your notes, but you can embed videos as well. So all of their notes, all of their videos, etc., are all under that one place. But again, I'm going back to, I think I had my higher class period 3 today. And again, we were talking about this, and I'll constantly refer back to it. But you'll see down at the bottom half of the course there is Origins of Life. Now, we haven't started that yet, but I would be hoping that some of my more able pupils would be then going and thinking, okay, I'm kind of done with Origins of the Universe. I know he's still blathering on about it, but I want to go and I want to have a wee look at Origins of Life, and they're starting to get into the notes for what's coming as well. And I know that a lot of them do, and I'll encourage them to do that so that when it comes to it, it's not quite that the learning is flipped, but that they have taken the initiative and they're coming into class and benefiting more from what we're discussing in class because of their own planning of the learning. And I think that that's key. So something like this just enables them to do that. And as I say, I think it's a fantastic resource for that. I'm going to talk about our primary colleagues now using something similar. This is a wee map of Scotland, and I have to say, we'll start off here, and a big thanks to Jacqueline Wilson, who's going to talk to us from Ankrum Road Primary here, and Kaylee Anderson from Ankrum Road Primary School as well. I had a great conversation with them, and initially it started talking about the fantastic digital resources that they used for independent learning during lockdown. But the big challenge as we met and we had that conversation together was, that's great. We've used so many brilliant digital tools. We've had to. Our hand has been forced, that we've been at home or we've been in specific rooms in the house, sitting in our cupboards and trying to engage with classes of 20 and 30 kids. But now we're back, and I think there was an overwhelming sense, a sort of a sigh of relief to see the pupils in our classrooms again. But ultimately, we have come away with so many skills and so many digital tools that can now be used in the classroom. So we had a great conversation together thinking, well, what were the highlights of the things that you used during lockdown as digital tools? And how can you really now see it using and embedding those to carry on that independent digital learning within your classroom so that you're really using these brilliant skills that you've formed, and then thinking about how you can use those to help pupils plan, monitor and evaluate their learning. So we'll let you hear from Jacqueline first, and she explains her resource. So hopefully we should be able to hear this.
During lockdown, myself along with my curricular leader colleagues were tasked with coming up with theme days to support both learning and teaching online and to continue to maintain levels of engagement across the whole school during the period of home learning. I worked with a colleague to create a whole school STEM day, as it was STEM week at that time. We came up with the idea of a STEM Around Scotland activity where our learners were encouraged to go on a journey around Scotland, following the roadmap and stopping off at a variety of cities, carrying a selection of differentiated experiments and challenges related to STEM along the way. Learners started their STEM journey in their hometown of Dundee, and by clicking on an icon resembling their home, they were taken to a variety of experiments and challenges that they could engage with easily in their own kitchen, using items that we hoped would be readily accessible to them: bread, pennies, apples, etc. Because Dundee is also known as the City of Design, they were encouraged to click on an icon of the V&A, which led them to a variety of more design-based technical challenges. At each stop on the map, learners could explore and engage with stories, videos, experiments, and challenges linked to that particular area on the map. For example, in Glasgow, considered as one of the wettest places in Scotland to live, we had a variety of water-based experiment and challenges, whereas in Edinburgh, famous for the Rail Bridge, we focused more on bridge design and building challenges. At each stop on their journey across Scotland, learners were encouraged to choose some of all of the experiments and challenges presented to them, giving them a chance to explore and choose their own path on their learning journey. As a school, staff are keen to continue to use this STEM Around Scotland resource in their classrooms, adapting and extending the experiments and challenges as appropriate to the stage that they were teaching. We built such a rich resource that staff felt it would be a shame not to continue to use it. Moving forward, this kind of activity could be used to support learners to plan, monitor and evaluate their own and their peers' learning. For example, at the start of an IDL focus, learners could use a resource like this to plan their learning journeys, maybe carve out their own individual learning path as their knowledge and subsequently their interest in particular areas of learning changed and grew, thereby giving learners the opportunity to explore their thoughts and ideas that engage them and also to learn in their own way, in their own learning style. There could be scope for learners with support to monitor their learning and to track their learning, mark off self-directed tasks on a learning chart, for example, hand in work for feedback and have their work recognised in these charts, etc.
Brilliant. So a fantastic resource that was put together by Jacqueline up on Ancram Road. And again, just thinking it was used so richly during lockdown, but how, when we go back into the classroom, can we use this to build on our learning journey for these learners so that they can plan, monitor and evaluate their learning? One of the other things that we have, and I think this is thinking about the senior phase now when we're thinking about actually planning their learning. I have it's a little subsite. We'll put the link on, or I'll add that into the chat just at the end. But for me, what's really important is helping our senior phase. So jumping into secondary now, I have a little website here that they can go to. So a downloadable study planner. And again, just making time for this, I think, is really important as well. So with my senior classes, I'll encourage them to go here. And there's a little Spark video that tells them how to use it. But ultimately, it's just built on Excel, or it can be built on Google. And this is it. So basically, they'll go through, and what I'll have here is I'll have access to each of them. Now, when they copy it over, they'll get a little drop-down menu. All of the SQA subjects that they could take would be here. You click on a green box, it says mealtime, that might be breakfast. You could change it to English and it'll turn pink. And ultimately, the big thing for them is to kind of say, look at your week and kind of say, look, if it's all pink, that means you're studying. But if there's too much green, that means you're not studying. However, you need a bit of green to recharge and to relax. So try and get a balance between the two. But ultimately, just being there and helping them to set aside time, valuable time that they need to be able to study and to be able to learn. So that planning is so important. There's also a couple of other resources here that might be useful for secondary practitioners. And we've got a course content sheet, and I'll encourage them to do this, is to plan and monitor their learning. So they can think about maths, Sarah put in as an example, their target grade, their working grade, the content that they have covered so far. So they'll do this, but then they'll compare this with the teacher and have that conversation with the teacher to say, here's what I think I have learned. And in the planning process, what is it that I should still need to cover? Is there anything that I've missed? But again, it's them taking charge of that learning. So I'll drop that link in and you can have a little look. And again, a couple of presentations that they can go through themselves just about what it means to become a leading learner, and that might be valuable for you. I'm going quite quickly now because I realise we've got about, and I want time for questions as well. We've got about 10 minutes left. Rubrics, I think, are one of the other big tools that I use quite regularly. Again, just being able to have pupils evaluate their work against what you want the work to be. And we have many ways that we could do that. And we can put a rubric straight into Microsoft Teams. And again, please, have a look at how to use assignments and how to use them in this way. So you can do that in Microsoft Teams. Create a wee YouTube video which the kids can link on, or the pupils can link on whenever that they've linked into their Microsoft team. And it just explains maybe how to answer a question. And again, they can stop, they can play, they can stop, they can play, and they can get a really good example of what a good one looks like, so that they can self-evaluate what their learning looks against what a good one might look like as well. Again, I had asked our colleagues up on Ankram Road, and Kaylee's just going to speak a wee bit now about how she's maybe used some of these tools for her primary journey as well. So I'll click on that.
Learning from home brought about many challenges for staff and pupils, but it allowed us the opportunity to bring about many new learning experiences for our learners. Pupil voice was important to us, and we used a variety of different strategies to engage learners with planning their home learning experiences. We had discussions via Teams on the comment section of posts and on live calls, had regular polls and questionnaires, and used other resources available to us, such as Padlet, to engage learners in discussions about their own learning. My pupils were in Primary 7 and engaged with these technologies independently. In comparison to in-person class discussions, using these forums allowed all pupils to have a voice, and they felt more comfortable sharing this way. Keeping in touch with pupils regularly to support their learning was important. Pupils submitted daily tasks via assignments in Teams, which allow me to track pupil tasks and track engagement. Pupils' voice was their preferred way to access their learning, as it was clear and easy to find. Pupil work was differentiated, and additional tasks were always available. We engaged with current events, for example, International Women's Day, World Book Day, and more, and pupils were given the freedom to choose their own learning experiences around these events. Live calls were also used to engage with pupils regularly. ThingLink was used to provide pupils with additional support materials, such as videos I had made or photographs. This was important for pupils who could not access live calls or chat, or for pupils who preferred to watch a video more than once. This is something that I will take forward into my practice back at school, as pupils found having resources available to them to engage with at their leisure useful. Detailed feedback was provided through assignments before being returned to pupils. The use of assignments led to positive formative assessment, as each pupil was given direct feedback on their work. Pupils would use the feedback to support their learning and often resubmit with changes. Some pupils asked for instant feedback themselves, and pupils also used the comment function on posts to support each other with their learning. Whole class feedback was used when appropriate, and again, this is something that I've taken forward in my practice, as it was extremely useful in moving learning forward. Pupils were given the freedom around how they would present their learning, and this freedom allowed for creativity to flourish. One task could elicit 10 different ways of approaching it, which was great to see. In my practice moving forward, I've allowed for far more individuality when presenting learners with a challenge. On return to school, we want to continue on the digital journey we have been on and continue to upskill
Tim, I'm not sure if it's just...
Using upper school and exploring Seesaw for lower years to issue homework and also to help with learning tasks in school. Breakout rooms and teams and the new return for resubmission option available on Teams now will be of benefit to us. Pupils had greater voice in their own learning while at home. This is definitely something to take forward in class, along with more pupils feeling confident to share their ideas when sharing via technology.
So again, just some examples there that you can see that were used in the primary sector as well. I realise that we're now almost out of time as I'm scrolling through all my slides here. Two big other things that I think Louise talked about them, and I'll talk just really quickly, and I'll drop the links into the chat. Learning logs, 100%. Step away from the curricular content for a bit and actually just spend some time with your pupils talking about how you go about evaluating and monitoring their learning. So with this, write your name, tell us how you're getting on in your learning. What do you think you know? What do you not know? Rag it, lots of ragging, red, amber, green, but get them to evaluate the learning in the classroom. Means stepping away from the curricular content. You're saying how to have time to do it. You got to make time because it's really important. We've also got this, which is, as I say, self-learning, and we're moving away from pupils now to teachers. I'll drop the link, but again, when we're thinking about CLPL, all of these independent learning strategies, we try it with pupils. Part of my job is through the DCC pedagogy team, and one of the things that we have is a thing called the teaching cycle. Explained really quickly. All of our main primary things across the top here are what you can do is you can click on those and it'll give you a wee CLPL that you can do independently on each of those through Genially, and then a wee tiny bit of scaffolding around what makes really good high quality learning and teaching. So this might be something that could be really useful for a lot of your practitioners and actually how they deliver learning and teaching, but again, that they can self-direct themselves through that. That's been a whistle stop, Louise. I'm going to go over to you and I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Tim, thank you so much. We've literally got 4 minutes left and I'm hearing a bit of feedback from myself. But some folk were just asking, you know, these links that you've shared with us, is there any chance you can pop them into the chat? That would be great. I'm also aware that you have a class waiting for you to come in the next 4 minutes, so we definitely can't go over 1:45. But if anyone's got any questions, feel free to pop your hand up. Feel free to add your question into the chat facility, and myself and Tim are more than happy to answer any of your questions in 3 minutes.
I was just picked up there, Louise. There was a few questions around that learner planner template. I think people are quite interested if they could have a copy of that. That would be really, really positive. And there was a few questions around about the tool which you use to create your mind map, Tim.
Ah, yeah, okay. So again, Louise was talking about the book, Organize Ideas. So a lot of that, yeah, sort of concept mapping and how you use word diagrams. So if you haven't done it before, please have a look at Organize Ideas. It's just been released last week on Amazon, but it tells you lots and lots of different ways that you can do that and the models that you would use to actually go about that. And if anybody does have any more questions, please go on to Twitter, that @LNT_Harris. Drop me a wee private message and I'll be able to help out as much as I can on that. I'm just going to go and I'll share a couple of things just through the chat now. But ultimately, yeah, that book, Organize Ideas, should have lots of stuff on it. There's some of my stuff on metacognition in it as well. Not to plug the book, I don't get any money out of it, unfortunately, so it doesn't really matter if you buy it or not.
So if everyone can send 10 pence to Tim if they purchase it.
Unfortunately, Ollie Cavlioli and Ollie Cav and David Goodwin, I think they're the boys that get the money, but yeah, it's full of loads of ideas from teachers. So.
And so there's a lot of love for your interactive mind map tool there, and also the last slide you showed about the teacher professional learning. So lots of love for that, and I think a lot of folk would like a copy if that's appropriate.
Brilliant, not a problem at all.
Tim, thank you so much. Everyone is saying thank you for your input. It's an absolutely brilliant session. Tim and I will be looking, Tim, I've not really spoken to you about this, but we will be looking at delivering some more national webinars on this. That will be available via DigiLearn Scott, just to get that plug in there again. Tim has shared his Twitter account. Tim, I don't know if you even want to pop that into the chat facility there. Tim shares a great deal on Twitter and it's just wonderful to follow him. But also, if you're not following DigiLearn Scott, please do follow us on DigiLearn Scott. That's where you'll be able to find where our webinars are and to book on and access just lots of knowledge and information about learning and teaching. So thank you so much for all joining us today. It's greatly appreciated to see so many of you.
Thank you. That's superb. And as I say, like any questions at all, please send it through. The other thing, just Louise talked about the DigiLearn Scotland blog. We did a session earlier on, and there's some other techniques in there that we've used: brain dumps, brain dump fills, how to do it digitally. So go and have a wee look at that as well. There's some great content from the DigiLearn guys. So well done. Keep fighting the good fight, Louise and Brian.
Oh, thanks. It's also good to see lots of familiar folk coming in from local authorities. So very nice for you to take your time out. So that's 2:45. I think, Nia, I think you're probably going to shut us down now. Is that correct?
Yep, if you just wrap up and we can close the meeting down.
No, thank you all very much for attending today. So we'll just hang on here for a few minutes and again, just see if anything comes through. But again, feel free to tweet DigiLearn Scott, feel free to tweet Tim, or yeah, just thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to run and teach my first years.
I know.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
Tim.
Tim. Go, go, go.
Brilliant. See you.